Abdul, you've never loved a team with a 7.5 win total like you have about the Giants. Anyways, Brian Burns, the edge rusher, talked this week about the excitement in the building. It's palpable. Jackson Dart, John Harbaugh, feel the excitement. Here's Brian Burns.
Everybody is excited right now. Every other team is excited. Everybody's 0-0. They're seeing the pieces they have, flying through OTAs. But I'd be lying to say that if I didn't feel like this was a little different. I was a little excited, and I expect highly of this team. I'd be lying if I didn't say that. But at the end of the day, like I said, you got to prove it. It ain't just, it ain't just about being happy and optimistic. You got to get on the field and you got to prove it against another team and, impose your will on them. So
he's a great player.
He's a very good player, okay? Very good. Let's slow down on the G-men, okay? 7.5 is the win total. Colin's been beating the drum for this since Harbaugh was hired, I think? Colin, I do have some bad news for you. We got a graphic. Since 2017, futility. Thy name is New York Giants. 10-win season since 2017.
Wow.
0. Look at the one-loss record, 31st. Now, I'm not going to mention where the Jets rank here. It's really irrelevant. Let's focus on the Giants. I'm sure you saw the news. Everybody's talking Knicks, so they missed it. Abdul Carter was injured at practice. A little panic rippling through the team. At least he wasn't sleeping in a team meeting or late for it. That's good news for Abdul Carter. Harbaugh won't stand for that. Yes, I've got to bang on the Giants any chance I get. But I'm just curious, your optimism level, it's mid-June.
I think 9-10 wins feels right. I will say a point of contention to that is Dallas has done a really good job, free agency and draft. I think Jerry Jones has maneuvered. He and Steven have maneuvered smartly, and I think Dallas's defense. Listen, we talked about this. The Dallas Cowboys are interesting. If you go to their top 10 players, they've got 10 legitimate players, like Pro Bowl level guys. I mean, you can say, Pickens and CeeDee Lamb.
All right, we're supposed to be discussing the Dallas Cow. No, scratch that. We're here to talk about the New York Giants. See, he just caught me off guard. The focus right now is the New York Giants. This happens constantly during the Herdline news segments. We'll bring up a particular team, and then we drift off onto side topics, discussing everything except the actual subject we're supposed to cover. I'm going to stick to the main subject. We're going to discuss the New York Giants. And we're going to do this because this is the most foolish, this is absurd. I really despise these kinds of visual aids. They're completely pointless. But before I dive into it and come to the defense of the New York Giants, please, 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 Giants supporters, don't forget to hit subscribe and watch the complete edition of the video. When you do that, viewership skyrockets. Subscriber numbers skyrocket. And it's not about chasing view counts. It's not about chasing subscribers. It's about being able to produce New York Giants content that people genuinely want to watch and talk about. That way, we continue having the most impartial, grounded, and honest discussions about the Giants. It truly makes a massive difference to watch the full-length video, and I would be very, very grateful. But yes, I can hardly believe it. In a certain sense, I'm glad they put these graphics out because it's such an easy target to mock. It's one of the simplest shots you can take. Whenever we see these graphi. This franchise hasn't accomplished anything since 2017, and they've been like this since 2020, it just makes you think, was Jackson Dart and Harbaugh the coach-quarterback pairing since 2017? No. They are not. If we were discussing the organization as a whole, okay? If we were talking about the franchise in its entirety, then some of those arguments make sense. Right? When you want to say the Dallas Cowboys haven't achieved anything in 3 decades. Does that have any bearing on the current team right now? Not at all. If someone asked, do you think the Cowboys will be good this year? And you replied, well, they haven't done anything in 30 years, that doesn't hold up. But if we're discussing the franchise historically, then yes, that argument is perfectly logical. And if we're talking about Jerry Jones's management, that also makes perfect sense. But if you're asking whether Dak Prescott and Schottenheimer can win, that has nothing to do with what happened in 2009. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing. Nothing to do with it. So, using a statistic like this is just ridiculous to me. Again, if Harbaugh had been the head coach since 2017, then sure. Definitely. And of course, if Jackson Dart had been there since 2017, absolutely. And if they had been there together, it would be an undeniable point. But that's not the case. Not the case at all. So it's meaningless. This right here is 100% meaningless. Now, I do grasp what Brian is saying because he's essentially pointing out that every team feels this way, right? You know, every team at this time of year feels this way. But there is something to it. I always try to emphasize that these are human beings. None of these guys are machines. Sometimes they seem like machines, but I think especially when you've been injured multiple times or you interact with doctors and surgeons. I've never met a surgeon who doesn't stress that you're not a machine. I've never worked with a surgeon who just says, you're not a machine. The way our bodies heal, the way we operate, the way your body changes with age and time and so on, it's not like I can just swap out a part and you're fine. That's just not how it works. And it's a difficult thing to accept, especially if you're injured and you're in a doctor's office and they tell you they can't just replace a part and make everything alright. It's more complicated than that. But what Brian is speaking to right now is the entire notion that this feels different because there is fresh energy in the building. You have optimism for the first time in a very long while. When Jackson Dart and Scarborough and others beat the Eagles on what, was that a Thursday night game? I think it was a Thursday night game. It was actually a standalone matchup. And they were behaving so excessively. I recall my immediate reaction was kind of skeptical. You know, over the long term, it's not my favorite thing. Right? Because you just won one game. You beat the Eagles, okay? You-ha. To keep winning. There's a lot more than just winning some random game in the season. I know it's a division game, but still, and I know it's the Eagles, a rival, but still, you're celebrating and going a bit crazy. But then I thought, you know what? In the short term, this team has had nothing. Right? In the short term, I like it because this team has had nothing for so long. This team has had nothing to cheer for, nothing to get excited about. Right? And the fans are just thinking, I don't even know why I'm watching at this point. And right now, it's like, actually, enjoy this energy. Bring some youth, some fun, some fire, right? Some intensity. And eventually, you'll have to dial that back a little because you have to be smart. You have to be stable and make the right decisions repeatedly. And now in the coming year, if you just beat a team on a Thursday in week 4 or something and you're going nuts, it's like, okay, buddy, we've moved past that stage. But bringing in a new regime, year 2 with Jackson Dart, feeling that momentum build, having a great draft and off-season overall, yeah, there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. I understand why he wants to both soak in that moment and enjoy it, but also remind everyone that you still have to perform, still have to go out there. I think that's a great, actually a very mature way to look at it and a leadership approach. Because you don't want to crush that feeling either. And just automatically say, doesn't matter. Everyone feels this way. Right? Everyone feels this way. Everyone feels great in June. We have to prove it. But no, you can exist in both worlds. You're a human being. So you can acknowledge the excitement. You can acknowledge that it's a common experience for many people, right? The Tennessee Titans feel really excited right now. The Cleveland Browns feel excited right now, right? Todd Monken and Deshaun Watson are about to take over, so everyone's feeling pretty good. The Bengals are winning the Super Bowl. The Bears are winning the Super Bowl. The Rams are winning the Super Bowl. And the Eagles finally got their offensive coordinator, right? So everyone's dancing and feeling great. Kyler Murray's about to take over with the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold and the Seahawks are going to repeat, right? So, everyone's feeling really good. And so, it's important to acknowledge that that's also a common experience, but it's also okay to acknowledge that things feel different, that things are changing, that you feel some momentum, that it doesn't feel like it did a couple of years ago. And that's okay, right? It's okay to absorb that. It's okay to be motivated by that. I think one of the most overlooked things is also just the fact that you're always having a conversation with yourself, right? You're always talking to yourself in your mind. You are constantly in an internal dialogue nonstop from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep, and even during sleep, you just don't remember it. And so, it's about keeping yourself motivated. You always need to find reasons to get motivated, always, right? Because again, you're not a machine. You don't just keep doing things because you're programmed to. No, you need to find that energy. You need to find that motivation. And so, even a simple sound bite like that, I really love how he addressed both sides of the coin. Because to me, that's maturity, and it makes me think. I forget which player it was, and he got hit with reality very quickly with the Packers, where he was essentially saying they were going to go undefeated. He didn't say it directly, but he was basically saying they could go undefeated. And I remember even Matt LaFleur had to say he didn't know what the player was talking about. And then they lost, and it was like, yeah, that's why you don't say those things. And it was one-sided, right? Because you could say, I feel like we can go undefeated. We have so much belief in this building. Of course, we do. You could still give an answer like that and still have some balance. And I just remember that soundbite was not balanced at all. So little things like this, to be able to demonstrate balance and to express balance, it's a great sign to me and something that resonates. That's why I'm more focused on the actual soundbite itself and the actual quote itself, because I like to point out when people say the right things and it's actually real, actually authentic, actually mature, actually genuine. It's not nonsense, not lip service, not just being overly confident, not just being immature, not just being a rookie, not just being a seasoned veteran, right? It's just real. It's just, what do you have? What's your experience? And I just love that answer. I loved that answer. And I'm interested to see because I don't think it's clear what this culture is going to look like for the New York Giants. I do think that Harbaugh ran a somewhat loose ship in Baltimore. But was that because of Lamar? Did Lamar have too much power in that regard? So I am curious because Jackson Dart doesn't have that power. And Harbaugh has all the power. In Baltimore, Lamar was number one. Lamar had all the power. And I've said this a million times, the coach needs to have all the power. Ben Johnson needs to have more power than Caleb. Andy Reid needs to have more power than Mahomes. Right? The coach needs to have the power. He needs to control the locker room. That's just how it works. That's how it needs to be. That's how it needs to be. And anytime it's not, there are almost always problems. There are almost always problems. And it doesn't mean that when I say someone like Andy has power, it means Mahomes has no power. I don't mean it like that, or that it's Andy's way or the highway. That's not how it operates either. But everyone knows that when Andy says something, you listen. It's not like, well, what does Mahomes think? It's just that when Andy says go, Mahomes likes it. Tease how it works. Mahomes has spoken about it. So that's the way it works. It's not how it operated in Baltimore. It's not how it happened with Lamar. And I don't think they had a great dynamic with each other. I think that's pretty clear at this point. So I'm interested to see what he does with this culture because this is the first time he gets to truly build a culture from the ground up in the modern era of the NFL. Like anything, the world is always changing, and so is the NFL. The NFL is a completely different experience today than it was 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's always different. Right? It's always a different collection of guys from a different generation. Right? Being a rookie quarterback, Jackson Dart, in 2025 is completely different than being a rookie quarterback in 1999. It just is. Completely different, experiencing completely different things. Just a different world entirely. So I am really interested to see what that all looks like. And how this team gets settled. And someone like Brian coming out here and saying the things he's saying, how that can permeate this team. Because again, things like that get everyone to buy into that type of messaging. That's a perfect example of culture being expressed. Of culture being expressed. So yeah, my gut tells me that Harbaugh has a little bit less respect from the players at this moment. I think of someone like Andy Reid or Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan. Right? They get higher. They walk into the building. I think it's pretty much automatic, unconditional respect. 100%. I do think because of how things unfolded with Lamar and Baltimore, that Harbaugh is definitely respected. Again, make no mistake about it. But I do think the players won't be as quick to line up. Right? They just won't be as quick to buy into whatever he says. I just don't think he has that pull at this moment. And that's why players like Brian, to be able to help get the message across, to help truly root that culture, root that philosophy, root that work ethic, root that attention to detail, it matters so much. And all it does is take that connection for everyone else to then fall in line as well. So that's what I'm really going to be watching, because the Giants have obviously been such a mess over these last few years. Even when they had a little bit of success here and there, it was the opposite of consistency and the opposite of a winning culture. And so, of course, I'm going to be really focused on Jackson Dart's development and Jackson Dart and Matt Nagy and what that's all going to look like, because to me that's really the most important thing. But I am really curious to see how structured this team is, how disciplined this team is. The Baltimore Ravens were incredibly undisciplined. I'm just really fascinated to see. Because that's really going to tell us everything. That's really going to tell us how much this team buys in, how much pull Harbaugh has. As power in the organization. How much power and pull does he have with the players, with the actual men on the field? When he's talking, do they shut up and listen? And you'll see that very early on. So I think it's pretty exciting moving forward. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you all think about the New York Giants? What do you think about this record? Oh, they haven't done anything since 2017. I guess it's over. I guess we shouldn't even watch them this coming year. But let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. We want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.